welcome everyone to the second session in our Microsoft 365 educational series. The series is focused on different topics around keeping long-term records readable through digital preservation. Today's session is focused on the hidden costs of delaying compliance in Microsoft 365 and why you should not wait to take action on compliance in M365. So I'm your host, Laura Starr. I'm a consultant and advisor here at DocPoint Solutions. I'm once again today joined by two amazing colleagues, Neil Crookshanks and Scott Money. Neil is a Channel Preserve 365 solutions architect at Preservica, and Scott is our director of operations here at DocPoint Solutions. Both of them are much more technically savvy than me. So we'll get to hear all about that and see some of the technology in action today. And I'm here to keep them in check from going down too many rabbit holes.
We're glad
so we're
you're
here together. All right. I just want to take a quick moment to introduce the two organizations, or reintroduce, I guess, the two organizations behind today's webinar. At DocPoint Solutions, we specialize in Microsoft 365, intelligent information management, services, technology products, and we're focused on helping organizations streamline compliance, think through governance, and develop effective digital workflows. Preservica is the leader in active digital preservation, and they are focused on ensuring long-term access and integrity of the most valuable content within an organization. And together, working together as one team, we really bring the best of both worlds. We're bringing the Microsoft 365 compliance tools to bear and trusted digital preservation solutions so that all of this comes together, compliance and digital preservation, in one seamless experience within your existing Microsoft environment. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to do a quick review of poll results from session 1 because they set the stage really well for our discussion today. We'll look at the ever-evolving nature of digital records management compliance and the cost of that compliance. We'll talk about the challenges and costs of compliance and how they're best navigated with Microsoft and Preservica working together. It's a better together story. And then we'll be getting to the part that I know many of you are on the edge of your seats for today, which is a demo of the Preserve 365 technology in action. And Neil will be walking through that demo with us. And then we'll be wrapping up with a quick review of DocPoint's services and how we support organizations along your compliance journey, and then Q&A and any questions that are remaining. And next steps. Okay, so for those of you that joined us for session 1, you might remember that we ran some polls during that session. And, afterwards we took a look, we sat down as a team and analyzed those results. And they were really eye-opening about what you all, our audience are experiencing within your organization. On this slide, you see the actual poll results. But I also wanted to just sum up some key points that set the stage for today's discussion. So we found that most organizations know that they need to follow digital compliance rules, but the infrastructure just is not there, right? So many organizations are still working within fragmented systems. There's siloed information all over the organization within teams, and there's really unclear or undefined governance models. And really all those things, it's a really risky combination because it does lead to these hidden costs that we're talking about today. So the cost can be legal, think about fines and lawsuits if you're not in compliance, operational, inefficient processes because the workflows are not there. There's financial costs, of course, because of not making the most out of existing investments in technology or resources. And then, there's also putting the entire strategic plan of the organization at risk by not utilizing the resources in an effective, compliant way. But that sounds doom and gloom, but there's really good news. Microsoft 365 does have powerful tools that help to mitigate these hidden costs. And that when they're used proactively, the tools can simplify compliance, reduce risk, and unlock the real value from your data and your information. And then you bring Preserve 365 in, and it's really a game changer. So Preserve 365, as we'll see from what Neil's going to show us today, brings that long-term active digital preservation and compliance together so that you can protect your records and reduce risk. And the really important thing to think about here is that all of this is being done within your existing Microsoft Enterprise license that you already have. I was talking to one client actually yesterday, and she said, what's really important is to basically squeeze every bit out of your existing technology investment. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today, how to squeeze every bit out of your investment. So, Scott, let's dive a little bit deeper here into the world of compliance.
Excellent. What a great place to start. Thank you, Laura. So as our team, we talk about these webinars internally. We try to come up with content that kind of feeds into the next slides we're going to present. So if we look at compliance requirements, this is an area that's changed quite a bit over the past several years. If we take a couple of examples from this slide, so if we talk about FERC 18, this was centered mainly around public utilities and licenses. This is from 2000, August of 2000. That goes back a little ways. And one of the examples in this one was that each one of these entities would have to have one person or more assigned to their records management effort. So that was sort of a regulation that was put into place. So that's an example of one. If we look at National Association of Insurance Commissioners, this was kind of created 2004. It was mainly created for 7-year content with the insurance companies. It was adopted by about 22 states, not across the board, and some states have their own version of this, but not so much pointed towards permanent records, but more on a 7-year retention policy. Excuse me. If we look at another example, we have NARA, the M2307, which was really reaffirming the goals from the M1921, right? And the transition to electronic records. So 3 examples there. There are many, many out there, and they are increasing at a fairly rapid state. So if we go to that next slide, Laura, we're looking at over 10 years. Now, the examples we looked at mostly were before 2000, but if we look at from 2015 to 2025, we're over 300% of an increase with new standards for retaining data. So what we see is that leads to a larger potential of a need for managing permanent records. So permanent records, we have to make sure that we have a way to retrieve that information, make sure it is viewable, searchable. And you have to ask ourselves, are we ready to do that? Is that something we can handle now? In many cases, it probably isn't, but we do expect a significant share of those increases in standards to include a larger requirement for permanent records. So asking ourselves if we're ready, are we ready for the compliance, to handle the compliance? The liability goes with that, the accountability goes with that as well. And that's what we're going to touch on. So we're going to have Neil share a little bit about what does this look like if we're talking about preserving data? How do we do that? So we're going to go ahead, Neil, I'll hand off to you. I think the first thing we're going to touch on is a little bit about security between 2 environments, in this case, 365 and Preservica. So I'll go ahead and hand off to you, Neil.
Perfect, thank you. I've moved the slide forward. Can we all see that?
Yes.
About to get the slide?
We're good.
Perfect.
Yep, yeah. All good.
Great. I know there's a few people in the comments have said that they can't see the slides, but it seems more can. So we'll keep cracking on.
Yeah, and the good news is the slides will be on the recording. So
Yeah.
if somebody can't see it now, it'll be there.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so thank you. Really, Preserve 365 has been around since kind of like the start of last year. It's been in development for a while longer than that. But really, when we built the tool, we worked in collaboration with Microsoft, and that was just to ensure that it integrated really seamlessly into the Microsoft ecosystem. So, we use Azure Blob Storage at the back end. We can make, maximize the use of all of the throughput between Microsoft 365 and Azure from a storage perspective. It also allows us to effectively utilize encryption. So we're encrypted at rest and encrypted in transit. And then one of the other key things really from an auditable perspective or just plain permissions security really is that the permissions, the access control list that are defined to the data as it resides within SharePoint is maintained by Preserve 365. So only the users that have like effectively a minimum of a read permission can continue to see that information moving forward. So it's not like some solutions where IT have to recover the data. It's literally, if you have permissions, you can gain access to it. If you can't, you can't. And also, just to add to that as well, we operate role-based access control. So Microsoft 365 has various different security groups for just about everything you can imagine, and we've added 3 more. So we've got a Preserve 365 administrator, we have a move group, and a Preserve 365 copy. And again, if your users are in the appropriate groups, then they won't be able to take any subsequent actions.
So that's really interesting, Neil. So what you're saying is that Microsoft has a great foundation for that user-based access and permissions, but that Preserve 365 takes it 3 steps further?
Yeah, I mean, effectively what we want to do is give everybody that familiar interface that they're used to, which is in this instance, for the purposes of this demo, SharePoint, and just extend it. So you'll see in the demo in a moment that we're effectively, if we move a file to the archive to Preserve 365, we're stub back, and then by clicking that stub, it will render the image. But again, that you will only see that, and you will only be able to render that image if you have the appropriate permissions. So yeah, belts and braces approach to absolutely everything, not just retaining the data in perpetuity if that's what you want, but also ensuring that only the right people can gain access to the data in the first instance. So let me quickly just stop sharing this. Okay, that can be an error, so let's not do that. Let me do this.
While you pull that up, Neil, I was just thinking back on what Scott, what you were sharing with the compliance requirements. And what really stood out to me was that the 3 you highlighted cross all sorts of different industries, right?
Exactly.
Talked about insurance, talked about federal agencies, and then there was a 3rd one that here I go, of course, I'm blanking on, finance.
EM 2307, right?
Yeah, with the federal agencies for sure. And so, that's why, I know we have folks joining us today from all of those different industries. And so it's very, I think it was just very interesting to think about how this form of compliance and the importance of preserving long-term content crosses all of those industries, and that all of those industries have also adopted Microsoft 365. So it's
exactly, and they all use these in a little bit different flavor. Like especially the insurance agencies, not everyone uses what was put out verbatim. They may have a blend of their state rules along with what their policy is. So, but it still creates content, right? We still have to manage that content regardless of what type of standard we're using.
Right. Yep.
All right, Neil, the best part.
Drum roll.
Hopefully everybody can see my shared screen.
Yeah, I think we need to click on share. I'm not seeing it. I think I can. do that.
Yeah, I think we can pull it up there. There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, I've had to move the video and controls to a different screen. So
Right.
now, of course, I can't see them. Perfect. Right. So basically, the demo, all we're going to do is walk through a standard deployment of SharePoint. So some, sites, files, libraries. I'll go through the process of showing you manually, so at a very basic level, how to use the tooling, and then from there we'll go into driving automation, which is effectively where the real value is to the tooling. So if I go into here and select, well, for a start, sorry, you'll note that we have an archive column, and these are just detailed as not archived, and that's because nothing has been archived yet. So if I select a number of these assets, and then we get a little archive option. So if I click that, I'm going to do a move. It's much easier for display purposes, but effectively you have a copy option and a move. A copy takes an immutable point in time copy of that file and puts it in our archive, where we do all our clever active digital preservation stuff that we spoke about in the first webinar. A move will basically take a copy of the file, put it in our archive, delete the original, and because I've got stubs enabled here on this site, it will replace it with a stub, and you'll see that in a moment. So selected some files, I've selected move, and I'm just going to simply click send to archive. So if I now come out of that, you'll see that these are now in an archiving state. So this is effectively going through that active digital preservation process we spoke about last week. It's doing the antivirus scanning, it's doing the fixity checksum scans, it's making sure that that file is in a fully operable position effectively, so that when we take it into the back end and start making all the various copies for it, we know it's in a good state. So you can see now it's archived and it's stubbed back, which is indicated by the URL. And the other interesting thing, or not, but the other thing of note here is that when we move the files, because we're stubbing back, the stubs are 11K. So if you've got files in here that are hundreds of megs, then from a user or a usability perspective, your users can browse the same locations to the same folders and file names, click it in the same way they would, like this, and it will render the file. So this is it's a web browser. It uses token-based authentication, so it's all very secure. So you can view the asset. We can view all of the metadata that was associated to that asset as it is in SharePoint. And we have some options to download the files. So normally we'd have a latest access as well, but because it was a Word document that's gone to a PDF, it's not really required in this instance. But we have a latest access, which is a lightweight version of the asset, PDF in this instance, a latest preservation master, which tends to be higher in quality, nearer the original format. So if the original video was a WAV, that would be something like an MP4. And then we have the original. So again, if it was a document or a WAV or a real media file, anything like that, you can download that as well. You can download the metadata as well, just by clicking the properties and download, and that will effectively come down in a industry recognized JSON format. Whoops. Go away. There we go. So if I hop back, so that at its core is the very basic way of taking a file. What we can see here is we've got a file that, so this is a real media file that resides within SharePoint and it's been archived. So what we can see here is because it hasn't got a URL on the end of it, it's effectively been copied. So if I click on the file, effectively it's going to give me an error, and that's because it's trying to open that file from SharePoint, so SharePoint's version of that file. So if I now click File and go to Archive, we get our Preserve 365 pop out and do view asset, that will now render. And the reason that that's rendering is because it's launching our Preserve 365 viewer at the back end. And this is where we effectively have that 2,500 file formats that we can support, again, that we spoke about last week.
So Neil, I just want to just ask you a question on the stubs. So the stubs essentially are like a footprint, right? They're like a footprint of the complex, large, either the original file format, the preservation, or the access copy.
Yeah, it's a link. So basically what that is when you click it, it's a it uses the credentials of the user that's clicking on it. It validates that they have access to that file. Then it launches the preview pane, so like the renderer. From there, if you need to, so say there's some kind of litigation process, and part of that they need to see the full audit trail, so they want to see the original file and then the latest readable copy that you've got of it. You can go in there and you can download it. So you can download the original file in let's say real media format, as well as an MP4. So in that sense, you've got the full audit chain of when it was brought in, all the metadata associated to that, and then ultimately, where you're handing over a usable copy as part of that process. But
and that high volume audit trail that you're mentioning is not in your SharePoint site anymore. So all that volume is no longer in SharePoint.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a really simple way of reducing your SharePoint storage overhead. So, I mean, I'm sure most everybody knows, but SharePoint storage is about the most expensive storage on the planet. So anything you can get out of there is for the better. And so it's kind of like, why wouldn't you almost really, we provide all this additional security and assurances to the data, and the storage is cheaper. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yep, thanks.
No worries. So what I'm going to do now is just show you the search functionality. So whenever we move or copy anything, we effectively populate the SharePoint search index. So without having to necessarily browse through all the folders, although obviously like we've shown that is really useful, we populate the SharePoint search index. So you can just do a simple search as you would any data, and it will go away and find it. Equally, we have this archive tab, and that will search based on that criteria for anything in our archive. And again, we can go in here, it does all the permissions checking, and then this is effectively rendering that same file that we showed earlier. So the next part of the demo, really what we're just going to very briefly dip into is the wonderful world of Purview. So we have full extensibility effectively of Purview labels. So as you can see in here, we have 5 labels. Some do nothing, like this one as an example, and some retain data for a certain amount of time. So if I flick over to the admin console, so this is the Preserve 365 admin console, and you can see that those 5 labels are replicated in here. When you enable label-based archive, this will automatically all flow through. So it's not something you have to create. We actually draw this through as part of our extensibility. Everything comes through as default with a nothing action, and then you would specifically go in here and say, right, I want this to do a copy or this to do a move. So for this example, if I set this archive permanent to move, and I save it and then hop back into here, if I was to select all these files and then do archive permanent, so here all I'm effectively doing is assigning a Purview label. It's doing nothing really in SharePoint, but basically as soon as SharePoint picks that up, it's going to apply the label, and then it's now going to go through that move process So there's obviously a lot of files and folders here. So it's going to go through that active digital preservation ingestion process. Then ultimately, all of these files, all of the contents will be the stubs, Laura, that you were talking to a moment ago. So that's one way of driving automation. And again, that fits in with the full kind of Microsoft data lifecycle management process for protecting your data. Another really good way of driving automation is through Power Automate, which I'm a big fan of. We have two connectors that are both available in the Microsoft Store. We have a Preserve 365 Move connector and a Power Automate connector. And basically all I've got here is a very, very basic flow. Monitor a folder if some files, assets effectively are put into it, gather the details of those assets. This condition is just checking, is it a file or is it a URL? Does it have the Preserve 365 archived flag in the metadata ticked? And if it does, kind of skip it. Don't do it again, otherwise it'll be going around in a cycle. If it doesn't, then basically go through to the move option. And then ultimately what we're ending up here with is we're just going to dump all of these various different metadata fields into an Excel spreadsheet, and then ultimately we can leverage that to do Power BI, or just a cursory glance to see what has actually been moved and who moved it and when it was moved and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's not to be used for an auditing because we've already got auditing, full auditing in Preserve 365, but it can be really useful from, I say, you can do some really good Power BI reports and then publish it to various different departments in your business if they have interest in that kind of thing.
Sounds like it would be a good sort of almost a form of chain of custody or actions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, what we tend to see at the minute is automation's fantastic, but a lot of organizations still want that level of manual control in it. So what we tend to see working best is you leverage the automation to go and do a relatively complex action, like go and fetch all of this data. Then somebody or a team of people, like archivists, records managers, data stewards, do an approval. And then that then steps back into the automation process of doing a move or a copy or something somewhere. So, I mean, I guess to take this example, here I could be right. Someone's put all of these videos, these construction videos in this folder for review to be sent to the archived. I've reviewed them. So now what I'm going to do is simply move them to this folder because I now want to commit them to the archive. So that could be as simple as that manual step. Go in the folder, review the videos, and then move them. So now if I browse to that folder, you can see all of those construction videos are in there. They've all been archived. They're all stubbed. So again, I can click on them, open them, but it's effectively using that Power Automate automation to monitor a folder, and then take an action when something's dropped in there. And then the last thing I really wanted to show, which just drives that Power Automate slightly further, but actually does work really well for the question that you just asked, Laura, and not that we set it up at all.
We didn't. This is off the cuff, everybody. Seriously.
We really did. We should have done, but we really did. So I wrote and I'm a novice at this kind of stuff. Again, I use Copilot to write it because why not? So I wrote a Copilot Studio agent that basically prompted me to go away, fill out some metadata fields in terms of query, then it will go off and so forth. So if I run through this, so in here as an example, we'll do a search for a WordPerfect file. I mean, as I say, you can do files that haven't been modified for over 2 years. And again, this is all effectively using Power Automate in the background. So I could just tick that box and say, go and find something that, data that hasn't been accessed or modified in 10 years, or data that is effectively inaccessible because these file types, like I'm doing WordPerfect here, it would be just as easy to build out this form to have another little tick box that says, go away and find all file types that are inaccessible. But in this instance, I'm going to do a WordPerfect, do a search for it, and there you go. It's found a big long list of WordPerfect files that sit in my demo estate. So what I've done is built this card out so I can either open the document or open the folder. So in this instance, I'll open the folder. You can see I've got some archived, some not archived, and this is the one in particular. Again, WordPerfect, it's not renderable within SharePoint. So that was that one. If I then pop back into here, I select a couple of files and then do preserve. It then asks me if I want to use the copy or move. And this again is effectively calling that Power Automate copy or move connector, depending on which one I choose. I'll choose move, tell it to go and do something. There you go. Obviously slightly expedited for demo purposes, but it will come back and it will tell you, good job, it's been preserved. And then I can open the folder, I can see they're archiving, I can see they're archived, and then ultimately I can, click on it. There we go. I can see the contents, can see the metadata. And it's really as simple as that. So you kind of the world's your oyster, really, when it comes to some of these things. That's just an example of where you can drive automation, but that's really where DocPoint come in, helping you understand Purview and Power Automate and Copilot, and where you can effectively save a lot of time through that drive automation, manually approve, drive automation again process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Neil, to add on, I just want to reiterate, we talk about the ability to find this data. That's one of the key points we want to make sure that we understand. So a lot of the deprecated file types, as Neil was sharing with us, are not searchable. That content is not discoverable natively in a SharePoint environment. What Preservica does offer is that we don't have to go through a whole conversion process of converting that file to another format, which is actually changing it from its original format. It's natively we can find that file and also display it. So that's really a key feature. And I think it's really neat how you can do the moves, whether it's manual, one-offs, or you have several options with automation. It's purely an extension of the 365 capabilities, which is really, really neat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly why we built it in this way. I'm a big, and I find myself saying this all the time, but I am a big advocate of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So by keeping everything really straightforward and embedded in the user interface that everybody's used to, it really just keep it really simple and straightforward. You don't have to go through adoption and training and all that kind of stuff. The complexities that are normally come with using new tooling. It's a familiar interface. It's a familiar search, facility or function. You simply just click a file and it opens, and it really isn't more complicated than that. When it comes to users, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it from me. So I'm not sure, Laura or Scott, if you wanted to reshare the presentation.
Yeah, I could probably do that, Laura. I can grab that.
I have it. Okay. Yeah, and I'd just like to remind everyone that if you have any questions around what Neil just showed, please do put them in the Q&A. Up there at the top, you should have an option to open that up and ask your questions. We're here.
Here to help.
That's right.
All right.
There you go, Scott. We can see it.
To switch over. It's gradually going.
Oh, and there you are. We lost you for a second.
All right, there we go. So I have my screen swapped around here. Give me 1 minute.
It's the frustrating thing with these. It's like you probably noticed on you demo on this one, and then you video.
It is
like, what am I listening?
It really is. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Just to walk through some of the areas where we support our customers on these types of initiatives. So we start with vision and strategy, and really this comes from your business need, identifying what your business need, and that can be anything from implementing compliance. It can be implementing a records management effort. It can be automation. Any one of those or something different. So that's what we get from our customers is what is their vision and what's their strategy going to be, mainly around platforms. Our
And
discovery,
Scott,
yes.
I'm sorry, Scott. I was just thinking about how well that resonates with what Neil just shared at the end of the demo, right? When we do that business analysis, that helps us understand the organization's processes, the approvals, the workflow approvals, all those things, right? To then recommend the best Power Automate flows, the most appropriate Power BI reports, all those kind of things, right?
Exactly. And that's really a great point. And that actually goes into the next item here is we let the business needs drive the technology. It doesn't mean that one's going to fit for everything that you need, but that whole vision, the discovery, the analysis, all these pieces come together, and that is what should dictate what technology you need to solve that business problem. And that leads us into our discovery. So things like identifying rot, and also what type of things we're trying to automate. What does the environment look like? So this is a whole discovery process that we go through to make sure we understand what the scope is going to look like. What does our timeline look like, and what type of, do we need any other feature sets, any other add-ons to meet your needs and expectations. Our next two, get that down, implementation, modernization, and also the next one down, governance and compliance. Those can kind of go together in some capacity. We do want to understand the governance and compliance needs of your business or agency. And that actually would be something we talk about during the discovery analysis phase as well. But we want to understand that before we get to a point of implementation and modernization. So these items sort of go together in some capacity. And obviously they are key to being successful. When we talk about engaging with our customers, we also want to mention that we are very big proponents of having the end users involved. We are not here, nor do we see our engagements be successful if we're trying to just dictate what the users and what the team's going to use. We're not going to walk in and hand something off and say, here it is. We expect and always make sure that we include our customers in all of these phases to make sure the user adoption is successful. Migration planning. Got my clicks right here. So defining a migration approach. Now, not all of these initiatives may include a migration, but there is planning in place. So when we talk about scheduling, getting our architecture set up, what does that timeline look like? Who is involved? Who's handling the communication? For example, any type of outreach for scheduling, we usually ask our customers to be involved in that. We get a better response rate when it comes from the business than just from us. That's both of us are involved in those phases. So
and
as
it's
we
all
go,
a part of change management, right? And
it
just the
really is. And
organizational.
Exactly. Communication is what it is. And making sure everyone is always on the same page. Mm-hmm. But once we get into those phases, we have something implemented. Another note I have here is to mention pilots. We are far more successful using pilots as a first stage. And that's usually an individual team within an agency, a team within a business that's engaged. And they're usually the key players that will be playing a role day forward. So that pilot is an example of what that successful platform or end solution is going to look like. It gives us a model to build off when we go to do the rest of the implementation. So highly recommended. It's almost standard now in anything we do, and it really should be for any project. We have the most success using that type of a path. User enablement, ongoing, that talks about training, ongoing support, right? We want to make sure we have a good handoff, make sure everyone understands what this new platform is. And again, these are the same people who are involved in the discovery analysis as well. So there's nothing new that we're dropping in someone's lap. Mm-hmm. Let's see, AI automation. Neil talked a little bit about this. This can go together with the dashboards and reporting. There's a lot of tools in 365 that can complement what Preservica brings. So Preservica is the extension of 365. Then we have all our automation features and reporting dashboards available with Power Platform. It's really limitless. Maybe we want to know how many records were moved, how many were purged, how many are pending, end of life, things like that. So all of that can be built in Power Platform in the existing 365 environment. So we can talk about things, these type of tasks. We could have several webinars about the engagement process, but really these are the key items that we follow when we're talking about an engagement and also services.
And that we're basically at DocPoint are here to be the guides to all of that.
Exactly. And I stopped sharing more. I'm sorry. Let me get that back up.
Well, that's okay, Scott. So we do have a couple questions that have come in. Appreciate folks using the chat since it looks like our Q&A is not working today. So please do put the chat. Yeah, so somebody said, can you give an example of how a state agency might use this tool? And then how a state archives might interact with the tool when transferring records from the agency's SharePoint site to the collections of the archive. So basically, state agency, those files are active or working through their disposition, and then going to the state archives, they have reached their disposition that transfers them there to the archive. And it looks like, Neil, you answered that right there in the chat, that you're sneak peeking our final session, which is to share customer stories. And that a key one we'll be sharing there is the state of Vermont. So we'll be seeing that in action on October 29th. Do you want to say anything else about that though, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, just that we can dig into it. We've got to,
yeah.
I mean, then like to I guess to go back to the last session, we've got a huge breadth of experience across all kinds of organizations, including federal agencies. So I say we have a number of case studies which we'll talk to next week, not to steal any, not to say next week, sorry, next session, not to steal any of the thunder, but State of Vermont are using Preserve 365, so that would be a really good use case to walk through. Excuse me. Just in terms of the question around Copilot, so where we are at the minute is we're using Copilot to effectively help find data within SharePoint and then move it into the Preserve 365 archive. But it is effectively a security demarcation point. So any data that resides within the archive cannot be interrogated by Copilot. So what's useful in that instance is if you know you've got high value data and you want to accelerate your ability to turn Copilot on in your organization, you can move that high value data to the archive and be assured that it's not usable. We do have on our roadmap, which again we will be talking about in the next session. So I mean, these questions are perfect. It's almost like we planned them, and we really didn't. So in the next session, we'll also be going through the roadmap, and again, that will talk to what our plans are with AI, which will ultimately be how can we leverage the value of the data that resides in the archive from a generative AI perspective. But again, default position is closed, and then it will be a customer by customer choice to open up as to whether that data will be accessible by various different AI models.
So there's an interesting follow-on question to that, Neil, about the use case of using Preserve 365 to exclude data from Copilot's view. And it sounds like what you're saying is that, yes, it can definitely be used for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we've done quite a bit of testing on it. If the data is copied in the terms of copy or move, the data still resides within SharePoint and therefore Copilot will be able to access it. If you move the data and then have the stub, it's only a stub. So Copilot can't interrogate it. It can effectively glean no information from it. Oh, I love questions.
So we had one coming, I think we may have already answered. Do you have to have Preservica to use this tool, so this functionality? So the answer to that is yes. As far as extension of 365.
Yeah, I was going to say, so basically you buy the Preserve 365 is a suite. So it compromises sort of some back-end storage, some clever stuff that we manage, and then a user license. And the user license is based on a P1, so the manual stuff you saw earlier, or P2, the automation, and that's licensed based on what we term a managed user. So they're users in your organization that are effectively creating the type of asset that would need to be retained for that long-term period. So again, typically what we see is organizations licensing the HR department or legal, or it might be plans, building plans, things like that. So if a specific department within an organization is creating assets that need to be retained for compliance requirements, then that would be where we would see those licensed.
Yeah, and we have we have a lot of information around the licensing and purchasing and what all those different components look like. So for those of you that have questions about that, please do reach out to us, and we can walk you through what pricing looks like on both the Preservica license options and the Preserve 365 add-on.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so I'm not too sure about the last question in terms of specifically what you mean. But if
they want to use it almost like vertical files or reference files. So meaning they want to have in-house copies of everything.
And then also send to archive. Yeah.
I mean, you can do, I mean, a copy if it is an immutable point in time. So if you want to keep your data where it is and then take a point in time copy of that, that's exactly what that copy function does. If the files in SharePoint get amended, you can take another copy of it. If you're doing versioning, you can take a copy of each and every version if you so want. Typically the idea is that the file has in effect reached its end of life. But we do, I mean, a particular similar instance I can think of, we work with a huge bank over here in the UK, and they have a process whereby when they create meeting minutes, they will keep, as soon as it drops into SharePoint, we take an immutable copy at that point in time. They then will retain those records in their SharePoint for another couple of years. If there's no more changes, nothing needed updating, anything like that, then they'll delete it from SharePoint, and then we'll retain the copy in our archive for another 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. If there is a change, we'll just take that final copy, move it to our archive, and then they'll just delete all of that from SharePoint just to maintain that normal practice that they take with those meeting minutes. So hopefully that has answered.
It's like you preempted a question too.
Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. So we actually use immutable storage. That's part of our key differentiator as well. So not only we use fixed checksums and all the kind of stuff, and resilience and replication and all that kind of malarkey. We use immutable storage as well. So yeah, full immutability. Pop my teeth back in.
So what we'll do, we do have an exit poll. I see one other question I want, Neil, I'd be interested in your thoughts on. But let's fire up our exit poll, and we'll kind of have that open while we get to this last question. We were just looking for some feedback from folks out there on what you saw today. Did you find that these features and capabilities are applicable to your organization? Please answer that accordingly. The results will not be shared, so no shame. So they won't be shared with anyone else here today, except of course our team managing the webinar. So thanks for your answers there. So Neil, the one question I saw in that I don't think we answered, when these files are transferred into Preservica using Azure, is this license managed by Preservica or the customer?
We manage it all, absolutely everything. So if you effectively take Preserve 365, it's all modeled into it. So all the peripheral services, like if you want Purview, Power Automate, or Copilot configuring, that's where DocPoint leverage their expertise to drive that. But in terms of configuring all the back end, making sure that you are aware that you've got, one kind of per month, per annual fee, that's all taken care of. But effectively, short answer is the price you're given is the price you pay. There's no additional costs for Azure or compute or anything outside of that.
Great.
Hopefully that helps.
Great
Yeah, for
answers,
sure.
Neil. That was a lot.
Yeah.
It was.
Rapid fire. Rapid fire.
That was rapid fire.
Good. Brilliant. Some great questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for those questions. And again, if you have any others, please feel free to put them in the chat here, and we'll follow up. Thank you to those of you that responded to the poll. I think it might still be open if you can put your answer in if you haven't already. So, little sneak peek, continuation of our earlier sneak peek. Our third session is really exciting. I think if you like seeing the demo today, you're going to really love the final installment, because this is where we will be sharing real live examples from our clients out in the field, if you will, on how they're deploying active digital preservation in the Microsoft 365 environment. So this is session 3 is where everything from session 1 and session 2 is going to come to life. I'm sad to say that Neil will not be with us, at least on screen. I'm sure he'll be with us behind the scenes on that webinar, but his colleague Sam Butler will be joining us. And Sam, who I've worked with a lot as well, excellent colleague there at Preservica. He is the senior product manager at Preservica, so he'll be joining us for that. And like I say, we have a really exciting show and tell coming up. Just a reminder that anyone that registered for session 1 or 2, you will be automatically enrolled in our final session, so no need to do anything else. You'll have that on your calendar. And we do hope you'll join us, and please invite your colleagues to sit in on that webinar on October 29th. Spooky season.
Just before Halloween, that's right.
I don't think we're going to wear costumes, but we're open to ideas. At least I am. I don't know, Scott. Maybe that's Neil. Maybe that's why you're not participating. You got wind of that, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We don't really do Halloween. Well, we do, but yeah, not as big as Americans. You really go to town with Halloween.
Trunk or treating, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One of the last questions that came through was if we are attending ARMA InfoCon, and I've replied to say yes. I believe we are all joining it together, aren't we? So
yes, and also for anyone that might be based in Virginia, we will be at the Virginia Association of Government and Records Administrators, VAGARA, which is happening at the end of October. So we will be there as well, and we'll have a booth there as a sponsor for those Virginia-based folks. Yeah, so up here we've got the next steps. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Wherever you are on your digital preservation and information governance journey, we're here to support you in whatever ways you need. As I mentioned, even if it's questions around licensing and purchasing, that type of thing, we're here for that. I see a question. Do you attend the ARMA conferences in Canada? I certainly think that I know we're heavily involved in ARMA in the United States. Canada, Neil, you all have probably been there before. I know you have a number of Canadian customers, as do we. And actually, we are looking to broaden sort of our market engagement. So if we're not planning to be, it sounds like we should.
Yes, we will be there in one form, shape, or another.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, feel free, reach out to us. We will definitely be able to get in contact at one of the very many conferences that seem to be going around at the moment.